Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to our channel and this YouTube live stream. So, we're going to continue our discussion about introduction to psychology. And last video that we had, we started a discussion about the introduction, and just have a very short recap so that we can proceed with the next topic. So, last live stream, we talk about what is psychology, and we've defined uh, etymological definition of psychology, which is the soul and logos, coming from the word soul and logos. Okay, but it is simply defined as the scientific study of behavior and mental processes. Okay, and as mentioned last meeting, now we have to take note in based on the definition, as you can see here in our PowerPoint, that you have to always consider the terms scientific study, behavior, and mental processes. Okay, behavior is the expression of what is inside our mind, which is the mental process. The mental process is the operation of our brain, is the manifestation of the presence of our soul. Okay, all of course, the life is a manifestation in itself, but of course, part of it is the brain. So basically, if we're going to look at it, the behavior plus the mental processes, which consist of uh, our feelings, our thoughts, this comprise our attitude. So behavior and attitude, if we're going to combine it, you're going to come up with what is called personality. So basically, psychology is more on the study of personality, scientific study of personality. So that is why it is always safe to say that all psychologists are okay. So again, all psychologists or all practicing psychologists are personality psychologists because of this definition. Okay. Now, from the term scientific, as discussed last meeting, is scientific method. It's orderly, systematic procedure. So now we will proceed. How are we going to do scientific method? Okay. As mentioned also in our previous live stream, that all of us, all individuals, know how to do common sense psychology even without studying psychology. And by doing and by following the steps in scientific method in psychology, this would make us more credible practitioners in psychology rather than those individuals who are just simply relying on common sense psychology. Okay? So that is why the title of this live stream is the one practice that most psychologists or psychology practitioners fear of. So this is what we call doing a research. So the steps of scientific method is by simply doing research. If you are in the field already in the field of psychology or you are a practicing psychologist, most likely you are start if you are not yet accepting this as part of your practice, at least you are trying right now to love doing research because all practices in the field of psychology involves or research in itself. Okay? Before you can do, for example, before you can do psychological reports and other uh, outputs, you need to collect data you have to analyze. Okay, and those practices are part of research. Okay, so again, if you're in the field of psychology, if you are not yet falling in love with research, at least right now you are trying yourself to love doing research. And for those individuals who are planning to enroll psychology, especially those students right now who are thinking maybe in college you're going to enroll psychology, this is one of the realities that you have to accept that by the time you enroll psychology, you need to love research, meaning you have to read, you have to write research. Okay, so this is now the process. Basically, there are a lot of processes, but the general processes of in the field of psychology. So that's why these are the steps in the scientific method of doing psychology. And this is very important because, again, as I mentioned earlier, this would make our output or our practice more credible rather than those individuals who are just simply relying in common sense psychology. Okay. So what's the first? The first step is to, of course, observe and theorize. Before you do something, before you can start a research idea, you need to have specific issue, and you can gather those issues. Number one, from your observation. Okay, and from your observation, you're going to theorize, meaning you're going to cite several theories that would support or that would explain what you have observed in your surroundings. By the way, I have to remind everyone that observation is just one method of knowing issues. But mostly this observation is widely used by practitioners and students. So basically, they will start with observation, and then again they come up they or find theories that would somehow explain what they have observed. Okay, so that's the first step. So basically, in this step one, you observe, meaning you look at your surroundings. You may also read several research outputs in order for you to observe what those other scientists have found out in their own research. So you're going to gather all those researches and then try to observe what's lacking, what are those things that have been observed, so on and so forth. And then you're going to look for theories. And by looking for theories, you are going to read one, two, or as many theories as possible. Okay? So that's the way you can theorize and then explain what has been observed. So again, the first step, we're still in step number one, and it requires your reading observation. Second is formulate hypothesis. So by the time you're able to gather or identify a theory, specific theory that would explain the phenomenon or the observations that you had, or the observations coming from your readings of different researches, you're going to formulate hypothesis. How are you going to formulate hypothesis? Well, in the step one, you theorize. You identify theory that explains your observation. So basically, the theory has been proven by that observation. Now, you are or you will try to apply that specific theory, the same theory, and apply it to other phenomenon. You're going to try to test it if they will still be true to other instances or other situations. Again, it is already proven from your observation that that theory that you have identified somehow true. Now, you're going to try to apply that one to other instances. So that's why from the theory you have identified, you will formulate hypothesis. For example, so step one, so you theorize. Example, common examples. Usually we use examples like um, behavior and academic performance. Usually common example. So you believe that the higher academic performance, the more diligent the individual. So for example, there's a correlation, and then specific theory explain that there is really a connection between um, academic performance and diligence. Okay, so that has been proven by your observation. Now, we cannot expect that this theory is applicable to all situations. So, what if the subject or the participants or the respondents of the study or of your observation somehow, like high school students, for example? Now, you are going to formulate hypothesis and test that same theory probably to another year level or school or other students if that same theory is still applicable to this population, to this new population. Okay, so you're going to formulate. So, formulate. So, there is a significant relationship between academic performance and diligence. Or if the diligence or if the student or if students are more diligent, then their academic performance will be high, or something like that. So that's how you're going to formulate hypothesis. We'll try to formulate another one. Example. I'll say, for example, um, sleeping habits, for example. Um, for example, employees. Okay. Employees uh, who were able to sleep 8 hours a day performs better than those employees who sleep less than 8 hours a day. Okay. And then, say for example, you identify a specific company and test that one, and then you're able to find out that, that this theory, no, you were able to identify a theory that explains the sleep, sleeping 8 hours a day helps perform you better in your job. Now, you're going to apply that one, for example, to students. So I will formulate, if students sleep 8 hours a day, their grades will increase or grades increases. So that's how I formulate hypothesis. Okay? So in whatever phenomenon that you are observing, try formulate hypothesis from the theory that you have identified. Okay? So we are still in step number 2. Now let's proceed with step number 3. So step number 3 is design a study. Okay? So design a study. So in for those individuals who are able to wrote their thesis already, they know what is designing a study. For those students who are about to write their thesis, designing a study is by identifying a specific method how you are going to test your hypothesis. Okay? So you're going to design. And in research and in psychology, we do have several research designs. Okay. The research designs can be summarized into two. We have experimental and descriptive. It's only two. Okay. However, under experimental, we have several kinds of experiment. Okay. In descriptive, it's the same thing. We do have several kinds of descriptive research. We have descriptive correlational, um, what else? Qualitative. Under qualitative, we do have phenomenology. Again, there are several kinds. So you have to understand this each research design so that you will be able to identify the best design for your study, or that will help you answer or test your hypothesis. In psychology, of course, or I think in other fields, experimental research is the one that we desire. It is because in experimental research, It answers the question of cause and effect. Okay. So basically, if you are doing experimental after your study, it is expected that you can explain that this particular behavior is caused by this one. So you can conclude in that way. However, with descriptive, you may just simply find the connection, but not the cause and effect. Alright, but not the cause and effect. So why are we doing descriptive and not the experimental? Because in psychology, we are dealing with human beings. And not all research topics or issues can be done by experimental. So that is why we use or utilize those descriptive methods or designs. Okay, like interview, psychological tests, uh, personality tests, so on and so forth, observations, behavioral observation, something like that. So those are some of the research methods. So eventually, uh, soon we get to focus in one of those one. No, soon in one of our topics, we'll be talking about research designs, and we will talk about those individual designs and try to differentiate each design so that you'll be able to identify. What we are talking here is that you're going to have an idea that as a researcher, you should be able to connect your hypothesis with the design that you are going to choose. This is where the common, I should say, issues with researchers. They have this hypothesis, and yet they can hardly identify what design they are going to utilize. Again, the design is very important because that will give you an idea what kind of data you are going to collect and what kind of data you are going to analyze and what kind of data and how you are going to treat those data. Okay, so that's the importance of designing a study. Okay, so now let's proceed. After identifying uh, your design, your research design, your methods, treatment of data, you have to collect the data because you cannot treat the data if you don't have the data. So, of course, you are going to collect. And as I mentioned earlier, the design will help you also identify to collect the data. Okay, so again, going back to descriptive and experimental, of course, for you to collect the data with experimental, you need to conduct experiment. So you need to modify a situation in order for you to observe if the expected behavior will come out. Okay, that's the experiment. And by that time, if the behavior, the expected behavior will come out, that's the time you collect data. You're going to record. Okay. With descriptive, there are several ways to collect data. You can do interview, can even do observation, um, you can do archival, collecting, retrieving information. What else? You can ask individuals to answer questionnaire, surveys. So that's descriptive. Okay. And of course, after collecting the data, you have to treat the data. You don't just simply collect and then make the conclusions out of it. Of course, you have to treat each design, experimental, descriptive, na, has its own uh, treatment. Okay, usually for experimental, we use statistics. This is to identify, compare if the behavior that came out from your modification of the environment is really the result of the modification of the environment. So you have to compare that one with the data coming from the unmodified environment. So we're going to compare the two. So usually, the, in experiment, we use comparison. Okay, comparison of scores. Right. However, in descriptives, usually we use only descriptive statistics. And what are those descriptive statistics? Like central tendencies, deviation, and correlation. Okay. Again, as I mentioned, correlation is still under descriptive statistics. Correlation does not provide cause and effect. Okay. With correlation, it only answers how strong the connection of one variable to another variable. Okay. With experimental, you can identify that this particular variable is the cause of the other. Okay. So we have to make sure that you get to understand this thing so that by the time you get to love research or doing research, it is easier for us to identify what method we are going to use in every issue that we will try to resolve. It's the same thing in whatever fields you are in psychology, even in um, clinical psychology. So for example, patient approach you that he or she has this issue. Okay, so that's the information given to you. It should be consider it as your observed information or data. Then you try to theorize. And then, after you theorize, you formulate hypothesis. Test that hypothesis to the same individual no, who would like to know about his or her behavior. And then, by the time you formulate hypothesis, you should know what design you need to employ for you to collect data from that individual. Okay? If you can conduct experiment, then much better. If not, you can do descriptive and then identify what specific descriptive research you're going to identify so that you'll be able to know if you need to ask the person to answer a questionnaire or survey or if you need to observe the client or the person or if you need to visit the person in his or her natural environment or you need to conduct interview the parents or the neighbors, so on and so forth. Okay. So the question, sir, can we apply those in all methods or not necessarily? Okay. So you just have to choose the best or the best methods of collecting data that would suffice the entire process, enough for you to come up with a conclusion. Okay? And then lastly, we don't just simply stop writing the research, writing the psychological reports or whatever reports you need to submit. You will need to apply those results. And by applying, well, this covers everything, including publishing your research output. This is the problem, with, especially with students doing their thesis, both in undergraduate level and in master's level or in graduate level, because they would always see writing thesis or dissertation is just simply part of the requirement for their program, for their degree. Yet the important thing here is if you're doing research, you need to publish so that other researchers, other practitioners will get to read your research output. Upon, upon reading your research output, they might be able to develop policies, help individuals, and many other things. That's one way of applying results. Don't just simply put your thesis or research output in your library or school library because no one will read it. As much as possible, starting today, try to publish your research output. If you've graduated several years ago and have written your research already and you were not able to publish it, visit your research or thesis, rewrite, and then submit it for publication. So it will be able to contribute to the field of psychology. Okay. Well, um, personally, I have my own published research, and at first I was not thinking like the goal. My goal was just simply to publish my research, and after that, I believe it's okay. And then I get to realize there are students coming, sir. We're doing research out from your published research. We are trying to apply. We are trying to put this one into a specific perspective. Okay, so I get after knowing it, like I feel happy. No? Like this is what we mean by applying results. Applying results is also mean that you are triggering researchers to do more research. Okay, out from your research. Okay, so thank you very much, and I hope you learned something. And if you've reached this part of this video, do not try to forget or like and subscribe and also share this video so that others may also learn about psychology. Okay. In the next meeting, we will continue on the topic introduction to psychology before we proceed with other subjects in psychology. So thank you very much. I hope you learned something. See you next live.